Hero. This week, my guest is Terry Flaherty, Senior Research Director at Forrester Research. Terry, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How you doing, Joe?
All sorts of good, thank you. So here's a little bit about Terry for you here. Terry's been an analyst for over 10 years with Serious Decisions and now Forrester, and has been focused on helping clients with their revenue process the entire time. He is a co-author of the B2B Revenue Waterfall, which is Forrester's most recent framework to manage buying groups and opportunities in the revenue process. Terry's been an industry evangelist in saying goodbye to MQLs and hello to buying groups and opportunities as the focus of the revenue process. So here we are then, Terry, we're talking all things, is the MQL dead? Um,
Perfect.
just
Cool.
before we dive right into the topic, Terry, I'm going to ask you a very fundamental question just to make sure
Sure.
we're all on the basic level of understanding. When we
Sure.
say an MQL,
Mhm.
what is it that we mean?
Well, that's a really interesting and multidimensional question, right? Because one of the challenges, Joe, is MQLs mean different things to different people, right? But in general, right, what an MQL stands for, and it's kind of actually a misnomer, right? It stands for this term called marketing qualified lead. And in most cases, marketing qualified leads are an automatic sort of signal that we'll see where marketing automation or some platform will look at, hey, who is this and what kind of interactions are we seeing? And they'll do this thing called lead scoring, right? And they'll prioritize and say, hey, this looks like the right profile fit. This looks like the right level of engagement. They reached 100 points or whatever my mythical method or threshold is, and we're going to send it to the BDR, or we're going to send it to sales. We're going to send it to a human for qualification. So, one of the challenges is we call it a marketing qualified lead, but there's really no qualification as part of that at all, right? Maybe this person is exhibiting interest, they've engaged, but the fact that they engage really doesn't tie anything to the concept of qualified. Right? It's just that here's somebody that's interested. That's probably the strongest statement that we should make, but yeah, the industry is just forever called it MQL.
So, if the MQL is something that I mean, previously I'm aware of some resources you've put out personally, Terry, about how you're saying you're moving away from the
Yes.
MQL. Could you tell us a bit more about if not if we're not leveraging MQLs, what is it that you're moving towards?
Yeah. So one thing that's really important to understand, right, is I've been on kind of the mountaintops evangelizing for about 6 years now, saying we want to say goodbye to MQLs, and a very common sort of misperception when I say that we want to say goodbye to MQLs is they're like, oh, so you're saying people aren't important because an MQL is a person, right? And that's completely not true, right? We're marketing and we're going to market to people. We're going to engage with people. People are critical in the process. But one of the problems with the MQL is, like I said, it's a person, right? And in B2B buying, unless it's a really small purchase, the B2B buying decision process is done by a group, right? If it's $100,000 solution they're buying, there's probably 8 people involved in that decision, right? And yet the MQL basically says, well, we're not worried or we don't recognize or understand there's 8 people. Here's one person, right? And we're going to qualify that person or score that person and send it over to sales. And the problem is that often is viewed as the end point, right? The handoff. We're sending you a person.
Mm.
And in reality, like I said, it's a buying group, and those buying group members, can engage with us. We could see multiple different people coming from the same account, interested in the same solution. They could be doing things anonymously, and even when people do things anonymously, like come to our website, we still can do a lot of analysis to be able to understand. Hey, look, here's people from Acme, and they're looking at my talent management page, and that's important insight to think about. So, when I say goodbye to MQLs, what I'm really saying is we want to say goodbye to a single person lead centric process, right? What we really want to understand and look at is this concept of buying groups, right? So I still, as I said, we engage and interact with people, but the most important thing that we need to understand is the context of those interactions. Right. And so somebody did something, they downloaded a white paper or attended a webinar, or whatever the case might be. What I really want to understand is a couple things, right? And the first is who are they? And when I say who, it's really two dimensions to it. Right. So who, the first thing is what account, right? Because again, individual people don't buy. It's this concept of buying group, and buying groups are part of an account. So I want to understand what account they're coming from. But I also then want to understand what that signal, what that interaction tells me that they're interested in. So, as an example, they downloaded a white paper on hiring and best practices in 2023. And I can say, well, that actually is aligned to our talent management solution. So now I can get the understanding says, Bob Smith, the VP of HR from Acme, came in, downloaded a white paper, and we may have 3 or 4 different solutions because we're an HR software vendor. We may have a talent management solution and an HR operations and training. But, when I understand what is it that Bob engaged with, I can say, okay, today this signal is telling me that Bob's interested in the talent management solution. And so, now I understand, hey, I've got the VP of HR. They engaged and consume content on talent management. And that's just so much more insightful than, kind of an MQL just as a silo. But what can also look at is, well, last week, Fred came in, and Fred was the director of talent management, and Fred attended a webinar on a same concept. Right? And now all of a sudden it's like, hey, I'm seeing signals that there's multiple people engaging. And that's what I want to communicate to sales because, as I said, sales knows. I mean, if the buying group's 8 people, sales is aware of that. They know that not one person is able to say yes. They have to go get consensus across the whole buying team, right? And um, one of the realities, one of the challenges is they may understand it. They don't necessarily do a great job of systematizing that. So if you look in, your CRM system at opportunities, a lot of times you'll see one person, sometimes you'll see 0. We really should see that there's multiple people there. And the same thing with marketing. Marketing understands that there's multiple people involved, and marketing does things like create personas and content and programs for create personas. Or would they do ABM programs? Right. And so they're thinking, I need to go engage with multiple people. But the problem is that pipe that connects marketing and sales and that goes through the BDR, so often it's a pipe that fits one person. Right. So that first MQL goes through and they get qualified. And the tragedy, the complete irony or the whole major catastrophe of this typical lead centric process with an MQL is once that first person goes through the pipe gets closed.
Mm.
And so, there may be other people engaging that marketing can see. And, we may be doing lead scoring and another person, Fred from Acme comes in a week later and they hit a lead score threshold. It's like, okay, BDR, here is another person from Acme. And we've been conditioned to actually penalize that. Right. And the BDR will look and say, well, I just sent, Bob from Acme to sales last week. If I send Fred to Acme, the sales rep's going to go, why are you telling me about Acme? I'm working Acme and I'm in sales and I have infinite wisdom about all my accounts. Right. So you're wasting, it's like, go get me something new. And so very often that BDR is going to look and say disqualified, duplicate lead, or they ignore it. And what they really should be doing is sales should be celebrating the fact that we've been identifying additional people because these are people they're going to have to go find on their own. Right. And me being able to say, we see 3 people that have been engaged that all are in the same account, all in the same solution opportunity buying group. That's a huge advantage to sales to get, right? But the problem is just culturally, we haven't operated that way, right? Culturally, it's been a volume game and send me leads, send me leads, send me leads, and send me new stuff, right? And that's just a fundamentally broken view of life. And what we found is if we think about just a single individual and somebody fills on a form, raises their hand, as an inquiry and turns into MQL, we only convert. I mean, our conversion rate from that point to close one is less than 1%. And I don't know about you, but if I think about a process that fails 99% of the time, and it's the process that's driving and producing revenue for me, I kind of go, hey, I've got problems, right? That's the 1% that actually works. I'd almost call it luck, right? Because we're failing. It's just that you look at it and go, you're failing 99% of the time, and something's going to change. And so that's been, and you can tell I get passionate and emotional even that we're talking about this for 6 years, but it's just such a pervasive major problem. And it really, the good news is, like I said, I've been talking about this at Sirius and now Forrester for 6+ years, this specific topic. we're actually seeing now a massive transition in adoption, right? And 6 years ago, when Terry Cunningham, who was a colleague of mine, and I started this topic, people looked at it and then that's kind of interesting, but I think these guys are a little crazy, right? And this isn't practical, this isn't reality, but in the last 6 years, technology has evolved a lot. It's getting more and more practical to be able to look at all these signals and group these signals together to be able to say, oh, we see a buying group, right? AI is adding it in this value. There's lots of technologies that can help you understand people from an account that these people are related to the buying group. So technology is starting to, be a very fundamental piece of this that makes it a reality. We had a client that went live from a lead centric flow to buying groups and opportunities, and they went live in 60 days. And they're a significant size company, about $400 million went live in 60 days, and they went live because technology enabled it. And they also had a really good alignment between sales and marketing, right? So technology's improved a lot. The bottleneck, the roadblock, the thing that inhibits adoption on this or slows adoption, it's culture,
Mm.
right? Because everybody's like, oh, we've been doing MQL since 1999. And we tell the board, we tell our executive leadership team, marketing produced 2,000 MQLs this month. And that, we think that represents 11% of the pipeline we quote unquote sourced by marketing. And that's just such a short-sighted view and a wrong view of really thinking about the value of marketing and the whole revenue process.
So the idea of going towards to buyer groups and following the opportunities in that sense, you say is that it's a long term solution? Is it? It has long term benefits rather than just short
100%.
term one.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and it's huge benefits, right? And I go back to, just the basic core conversion rate of, if I'm only sending you one person, you're not near as successful as if I'm sending you a lot of insight. And we see, client examples all the time. Client stood on stage at a big conference last week, and cited the 300% improvement in conversion rate when they tell sales, hey, there's multiple people involved and there's multiple signals, as opposed to here's that one person. 300% improvement in conversion rate, right? And it's not going, oh, I need 300% improvement or 300% additional budget to do that. It's just saying we need to take our 25-year-old antiquated process and recognize that was built in an environment where we really didn't have a whole lot of insight about people and interaction, but now we do. And, so we need to get off of that addiction we have of how many MQLs you produce and really start looking at how many opportunities are you engaging with? How many people in the buying group or, can we associate to these opportunities? How many interactions are we seeing both with named people and anonymous people? And that just gives us so much better insight. And that's what leads to these dramatic improvements, right, in performance.
I mean, and not least of which on your point of how technology has come across, not least of which lead forensics. Obviously, that's something we can help too. So stick with us for that.
Sure.
I will come back to that one towards
Okay.
the end of our conversation.
Sure.
Don't worry. So then, if it's what's the implication of having multiple people involved with, let's say, the buyer groups? Does that mean you often see somebody become an internal champion?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So if you think about, the buying group in general, there's a set of roles that people play in that buying group. And so, somebody or some people will be the champions and that's typically the person that's going to benefit from solving the problem. And then I'll have, you know, decision makers that are on top of that. And that's often where, either the budget's coming from or, like a business decision maker will own the budget. A technical decision maker may be saying, hey, it has to fit certain guidelines. It has to fit with our ecosystem. A lot of requirements from a technical perspective. So I'll have business decision makers on both sides of that fence. I'll have influencers, right? And so these may be people, let's say, for example, I'm a VP of HR. I'm sorry, VP of marketing, right? And we're making a decision to buy a new CRM system. As a VP of marketing, I'm not the decision maker on that, but I probably am a strong key influencer, right? Because I'll say, hey, if when we move from vendor A to vendor B, here's the ramifications of how my world's going to change and how I'm going to be able to fit in it. So I want to have input on recording and process and all that, just as a VP of marketing, even though I'm not the decision maker and I'm an influencer. And then I have users, right? And users can have a role in this decision process too. And then I have ratifiers, finance, and whatever they'll say yes and no. So, there's a whole group of people and they're playing different roles. And, we can see that buying group, depending upon the size and the complexity of what's being bought. It's 3 people kind of as a low end. But if we're looking at, $1 million deals, it could be 15, 20 people. And it could be people from multiple different groups in the organization. It may even include people outside the organization. Right.
Mm.
And the key is, all this insight's critical and sales needs all that insight, and sales will often find that. But, if I can help them find that information earlier, right, and make it easier for them to recognize that, number one, I may find stuff that they know about, which is a huge help, right? But I'm also going to be able to identify that insight quicker. And so, if we think about the value that we really see in this transformation, conversion rate's a piece of it, right? But also velocity, right? We have clients that are saying, hey, we're cutting, a third or a quarter of the time off of our,
That's
we're
live
cutting
TV, folks.
live TV folks. Yeah. We're cutting like a third of the velocity because we're able to provide insight that sales would have to, they have to figure that out, but we can tell them about it earlier and that shortens the sales cycle. So huge amount of value. And it's just, a lot of our clients at Forrester, when we talk to them about this transformation, it's like, it's so obvious because of course I want, as a marketing organization, as a sales organization, of course, I want all this insight and I know I'll benefit from this insight. But the process that they have, and to some degree, less degree now, but partially in the past, it was the technology, but now it really just comes down to our culture is marketing does stuff, throws other offense to BDR. The BDR does stuff, throws other offense to sales. A lot of collaboration. There's not a lot of communication, right? And we have, like marketing is judged on MQL volume. And what's marketing do when MQL volume is low? They kind of change the rule on what an MQL is, and they make sure they hit their goal. And what they're doing is giving the BDR a lot of garbage, right? And so the marketing hits their goal, and BDR suffer because they're getting all this stuff that really isn't qualified and really even good quality, but marketing did their actions to hit their MQL goal, right? And that's the problem is when you think about the process in these silos, you'll have all these people come in and go, this is great. But yet our revenue is way down because we're not thinking about the ramifications of how everything fits together and not thinking about a holistic process.
It's incredibly timely that you mentioned that actually, Terry, the collaboration between sales and marketing departments, because our next webinar, the one following the week after this one today, is all about sales and marketing collaboration. So if you're
Yeah.
watching this and you're thinking, oh, that sounds interesting, do sign up for that one as well. So
So,
that
so
will
I'm going
be
to say something profound in advance of that, right?
oh, please.
If your organization is focused on MQLs as the thing that goes through the revenue process, pretty much impossible to have sales and marketing collaboration or alignment. It really is. Right.
Wow.
Because yeah, it really is because you're for true sales and marketing alignment, you have to have the common goal. Right. And sales, I think everybody knows this, but let's be really frank. Sales doesn't care at all about MQLs. A lot of times they'll look at MQLs and say, this is a distraction. They're really for quality. I don't really care. What I'm focused on is opportunities and revenue. Right. And when you change the goal of marketing to be able to say, we're going to, you are a critical part of creating opportunities and helping to accelerate opportunities and drive revenue, as opposed to, oh, you go produce leads that may or may not pan out. That's where you start to get alignment. And then the next piece of alignment is you have to have really good, clear understanding of roles and responsibilities. But that clear understanding of roles and responsibilities is all around breaking down these silos of marketing produces stuff and throws it over the wall. And then the BDR is the same thing and throws it over the wall. So there's my profound statements for next week's webinar is if you're focused on MQLs, you will never, ever, ever get marketing and sales alignment because you're focused on different goals and you're only looking at a small segment. I mean, you get one MQL, but in reality, like in B2B transactions, B2B buying decision processes, 8 people and 45 interactions or whatever. So it's that level of magnitude, and hiding 95% of that from sales when marketing can see it, and hiding that intentionally or unintentionally, but just the fact we're not leveraging all that other insight is that's a massive problem. That's why, I've been on the soapbox for 6 years.
So let's say, potentially a head of marketing is watching this. If you are, hello. Um,
So,
what what would you recommend that they do if they want to start the process of, or at least start a conversation about moving away from MQLs and heading to
yeah.
more towards buyer groups? What would you recommend they do? Are there resources they can look at? Is there actions they can take? What's that advice for them, Terry?
So it's kind of interesting, right? And um, probably the most important thing that sales and marketing can do, which they don't do very often, is actually talk, right? And you talk to marketing people, and it's like, when was the last time you sat in a sales call? And you get these blank stares. And how often do you meet with sales about goals and objectives, and you get blank stares? So one of the first things that we recommend. Well, let's do a quick sidebar, right? When I think about this transformation away from MQLs and into buying groups and opportunities, this is a pretty big organizational transformation, right? So as a CMO, you cannot do this on your own, right? You have to have really tight alignment between marketing and the BDR and sales and finance and product marketing. All these people, all these organizations have to come together on this. And so I need a way to start communications, right? And so we guide our clients all the time on step number one is we have to improve this alignment, and the vehicle or one of the vehicles to do that. We're analysts. We always give things that we have fancy terms, but create what we call a revenue council, right? And a revenue council is just this fancy term that says, hey, let's get marketing and sales and BDRs and product marketing and finance and whoever, in a room, because all these people influence the revenue process. So let's get these people in a room on a regular basis and let's just talk. Right. And when we say let's just talk, it's number one, let's start by understanding how we're doing and, how's our process performing? Where do we have problems? How do we fix it? And one of the problems always is, oh man, we're lead centric and we're not taking advantage of all of this insight. And so, there's kind of two things that we need to think about, right? When we think about alignment, and there's I've got this revenue process, and what is it that I'm sending through the revenue process? And so that's the whole debate of, do I send a single person MQL or do I send insight about a buying group, right? But then there's like the blocking and tackling and just the core foundations. And so, service level agreements are one example of how marketing and sales are supposed to work together, right? We're going to produce things of some quality, and we expect you to do follow up in some way, right? And if I don't have that agreement, and I'm not operationalizing that agreement, then it really doesn't matter if what I'm passing through the process is an individual lead or a buying group, right? And so if I send you something and you're not going to follow up on it, or I'm not meeting the expectations of what quality is of what I'm sending, then it's kind of a fantasy to think that switching from leads and MQLs to buying groups is going to win. So it's two pieces, right? I need to get the blocking and tackling. Do I have service level agreements in place? Do I have the right messaging? Do I have the right programs that are effective? All the right tactics, all this stuff. Get the blocking and tackling working. And then also you think, and when you do that, you're going to improve, but you're not going to improve that much, right? Because you have this ceiling that says, okay, I'm sending you this small sliver of information about this opportunity and that's it. As opposed to I'm sending you all this insight. And when I move to that too, then that's where I see this, dramatic improvement in effectiveness, because number one, I fixed all the blocking and tackling. Number two, we've changed what's gone through the process. But at the end of the day, like if I'm not in a conversation with sales and these other functions on a regular basis, not going to happen. Right.
Mm.
So, and I think both for moving from MQLs to opportunities and also just this whole concept of sales and marketing alignment, set up a meeting and make it a regular cadence and talk about how you're doing, how we're doing against goals, what's our volumes and everything look like. We have to do that. Right. But also talk about what's broken in the process that we're going to go fix. And when I look at like that whole holistic process, um, starting out, I have clients that identify 17 things that are broken. Right. And so then we have to collaborate, prioritize, collaborate and prioritize and say, we can't do 17 things all at once. Here's the first two that we're going to do. Right. And so part of this conversation, this revenue council means is here's how we're doing it. Here's what we said we're going to change and how we do it. We hold each other accountable to say, this is what we're going to do and how we doing against it. And is it working? And okay, we fixed problem 1 and 2. Let's go fix problem 3. Oh, wait, well, there's another problem that popped up and we need to have a new number 3. Great. We all agree that. Let's go change it. If I'm not doing that, then all I'm doing is reinforcing that everybody operates in silos and that leads to really bad performance in the revenue process.
Absolutely. Well, Terry, you've offered up some incredible value and insights here into, whether it's quite clear which side of the camp you're on in terms of, is the
100%.
MQL dead? So I'm going to start to wrap up our conversation here. But just before I come back to you with one final question, Terry, I'm just going to
Sure.
address our audience just for 2 minutes. Many
Sure.
superheroes, obviously this being B2B superheroes, have the power of invisibility. So wouldn't it be great to be able to reveal the invisible B2B website visitors to your website? Lead Forensic is software which does exactly that. It shows you and it identifies visitors to your B2B website, showing you their customer journey, what links they've clicked on, pages they've looked at, and all in real time. If you'd like to book an obligation free trial or sit a demo with us, just let me know on the poll, which is on screen now. I'll leave this up as we come to the end of our conversation with Terry here today. And also, if I could ask you to click on the webinar feedback survey, which is just underneath it as well, I would hugely appreciate hearing what you enjoyed about this webinar here with Terry today. So, Terry, once again, I'm coming back to you. Um, you provide us with a lot to think about with MQLs and marketing strategy options. But if I could just ask you for one top tip today, one final takeaway you'd like everybody to go away with who's watched this with us today, what is that golden rule? What's that top tip for them today, Terry?
Cool. One tip that I would say, um, yeah, I think we've hit on it, but I can't overemphasize the importance of, um, the revenue process as it sits today, right? If you're focused on MQLs, it's causing problems and it's going to cause more and more problems and it's putting you at more and more of a competitive disadvantage. Right. So I think the one tip is, um, you know, start learning about what it takes to make this transition and think about it seriously, look at it seriously and start talking, across your organization, marketing and sales about, how we could possibly make this change. It's worth it. And if you go to Forrester and take a look at, the Forrester website and the blogs, um, non-clients can come to the blogs and I've done a lot of research. I think Joe you mentioned some of it, but I've got tons of blogs that they're all focused on how do we make this transition wise and important. So, and what we're seeing is this is probably one of the most significant things that marketing can do right now. Number one, to help justify their existence, because marketing is always under pressure to prove their existence. We're under a huge amount of pressure now to kind of continue to hit revenue goals with budget pressures. Right? And the only way you're going to do that is, change. You can't go spend more money, so you're going to have to change and make your process more efficient. It's the old get more out of less, right? And you can nickel dime little process changes, try to improve it. But if you really want to set yourself up to make this work, the cornerstone of that key is, number one, marketing and sales alignment. Number two, get off that individual MQL and start recognizing that the buyer is really a buying group and leverage that insight. So that's probably 2 tips or 3 tips rolled into there. But that's the key, right? Is, and like I said, I get pumped up about this even 6 years later, because for the first 4 years when we evangelized this, everybody's like, oh, this is really interesting concept, but I'm not sure it's real. And in the last year and a half and now it is 100% real. Right? And it's something that it sounds scary, but it can be done. And I think the scarier thing is what it looks like, a year from now or 2 years from now, if you don't do it.
Absolutely. Well, no, Terry, I absolutely appreciate that you could quite boil it down to when you had to give so much more. It's absolutely not a problem at all for us here. So,
Fit.
Terry, thank you so much for sharing your B2B superpowers with us today. Remember to keep an eye on Lead Forensic socials for news of our upcoming webinars, including that one on sales and marketing collaboration that is happening next week. And we will see you again very soon. Terry, thank you so much.
Thanks.